A nation in mourning over the loss of a life well lived.
We're going to miss her terribly.
92-year-old Barbara Bush passes away with the first man she ever kissed by her side until her last breath.
I married the first man I ever kissed. You talk about a bore. I am the world's worst.
Married 73 years, this couple remained an old-fashioned love story.
I fell in love with him practically at first sight.
Mrs. Bush will be remembered for her generosity, grace, and dedication to Maine and beyond.
What a life. She was an inspiration for all, no question.
A devoted mother, wife, and first lady to the nation. We honor a woman of class who will never be forgotten.
She was such a lady, just the ultimate lady, and she just was so kind and compassionate and just cared about people.
Tonight, a special presentation. Barbara Bush, A Legacy of Love. Flags are at half-staff at Walker's Point in Kennebunkport and beyond in memory of Barbara Bush, the wife of a congressman, ambassador, CIA director, vice president, and president, passed away Tuesday evening at the age of 92.
As we all know, she lived much of her life in the political and public spotlight, using her notoriety to champion the so many causes that she cared so deeply about. She, of course, spent her summers right here along the coast of Maine with her family. Barbara Pierce Bush was born in 1925. She was raised in a New York City suburb. She attended a prestigious private school, and then at age 16, she met what would turn out to be the love of her life, George Herbert Walker Bush, during Christmas break. She left college to marry Mr. Bush after he returned home a hero from World War II. Married for 73 years, the couple had a long legacy. 6 children. Lost their daughter Robin, though, to leukemia at the age of 3.
In a statement put out by his spokesman, former President George H.W. Bush says this about his wife. I always knew Barbara was the most beloved woman in the world. And in fact, I used to tease her that I had a complex about the fact. But the truth is, the outpouring of love and friendship being directed at the enforcer is lifting us all up.
CBS 13's Jana Barnello has been in Texas all week for us, and she has details on that part of the story. Jana.
Kim, Greg, we're here outside St. Martin's Church, where on Friday, the public will have a chance to pay their respects to Mrs. Bush. Saturday, the funeral will be held. Friday, she will lie in repose, and the public will be able to come pay their respects from noon to midnight. Saturday, the funeral, it is invitation only. We know current First Lady Melania Trump will be here to pay her respects, as well as the Clintons and the Obamas. As you hear the church bells ring right now, the Bushes have been members of this church since the 1960s. They are very much a part of the Houston community, and that community is very much mourning the loss of Barbara Bush.
I get chills. I get chills just thinking about it.
The staff at Molina's Cantina won't ever forget their visits from President George and Barbara Bush.
It was just very exciting for everybody, even the guests.
General Manager Maria Elena Sanchez says there was always a buzz when they'd visit, and always an admiration for the former First Lady's love of her husband.
How kind and how strong and how dedicated she was to her husband. And I tell you this because I took their last order, and when I did so, she ordered for him. And throughout the meal, she'd, wipe his mouth, and she was just very loving, and she was just taking care of him.
The Bush's history at Molina's goes back decades to the 1970s, when Ricardo Molina's father owned the restaurant.
We tried to afford them as much privacy as possible, but when they walked in, they were like superstars.
Now that one star is gone, the staff says they're holding on to memories, like this signed photo of the Bushes with server Leo Mendoza. They took it together in 2003, and Mendoza says Mrs. Bush came through on her promise to send Mendoza a copy.
I received the envelope with the picture and the autograph, yes.
So they're so thoughtful.
Yes,
Barbara Bush's generosity was unmatched in their eyes. Sanchez points to this picture as proof.
Right before they got up to leave, there was like 10, 15 children that just ran to them. And so they started taking pictures. The Secret Service kept saying, come on, let's go, waving with their hand. And she just said, wait a minute. And so they stopped, stayed for another 10, 15 minutes to take pictures with all the children.
Their pictures with George and Barbara are hung with pride and appreciation for the former First Lady.
She will be missed, and Houston loves her, and will continue to be there for Mr. Bush.
So many well wishes going to Mr. Bush, President Bush, tonight. We know he held his wife's hand all day yesterday and was by her side when she passed. Now, after the funeral here on Saturday at St. Martin's, Barbara Bush will be laid to rest on the grounds of the George Bush Presidential Library and Museum in College Station, Texas. She will be buried next to their daughter, Robin, who died from childhood leukemia at almost 4 years old. And in Maine, on Sunday at Gooch's Beach, friends are planning a memorial for Barbara Bush.
Now, there is a small but growing memorial of flowers near a plaque right over there that is in front of the Bush's home here at Walker's Point. People have been stopping all day to pay their respects to Mrs. Bush. There is even a very sweet note written by a child. In fact, some of the young visitors would have no doubt made Mrs. Bush very happy.
We wanted to come see the memorial, and we wanted to just look at the beach and the water and just pay our respects towards Miss Bush.
She was a very nice lady, and she lived a very nice life, which is good.
CBS 13's Brad Rogers has more on what they're telling us today.
You know, very down to earth, very gracious, very otherworldly person.
Eric Lynn says George and Barbara Bush are like family in Kennebunkport. He says they personify this town and the way people live their lives. Humble, hardworking, and charitable.
I've met the Bushes several times in restaurants, at Walmart. You know, they were global figures, but local people and friends.
And whenever Barbara Bush went shopping in the lower village, she would always greet people with a warm smile.
Very often she would run around without her Secret Service.
Walker's Point is well known to tourists as well. A retired teacher from Los Angeles, visiting Maine for the first time, has high praise for Barbara Bush.
What she's done for the children through the literacy programs and the building of a children's hospital, it cannot be understated in any way. Very proud to have had her as the First Lady.
What a life. She was an inspiration for all, no question.
Mike Prendergast says Barbara Bush loved her dog Millie, but he says she also loved his wife's 2 Newfoundland dogs, especially the big one.
Actually, he told me to leave him at the compound if we were going out of town.
She did?
Oh, yeah. She said the guards will take care of him. I said, yeah, right.
Barbara Bush, as many know, had a wonderful sense of humor. She will be dearly missed in this community. In Kennebunkport, Brad Rogers, CBS 13 News.
The police department right here in Kennebunkport is feeling the loss today, too. The local officers would often assist the Secret Service when the Bushes held special events here at Walker's Point or nearby. The current police chief was also in Sanford for many years, where the former president and first lady would often arrive on Air Force One.
And we were so used to Air Force One flying in. One day they flew in on a private jet. And they got out of the private jet and started to take care of their own luggage, which was unusual. So I hopped right in and tried to ask her if I could help her. And she said, no thanks. I said, she goes, we're just normal folk now, no more fuss. And I thought that was kind of neat, but I still grabbed her bag anyways.
Mrs. Bush not only touched lives right here in Kennebunkport, her legacy reaches across the state, certainly at the hospital that bears her name. Mrs. Bush spent a lot of time at the Barbara Bush Children's Hospital at Maine Medical Center in Portland. In 2012, she stopped by a lemonade stand being run by a child who was waiting for a heart transplant. Nolan Murray raised money not for his treatment, but for therapy dogs who visit all of the children.
Roughly 10,000 patients are treated each year at the state's only children's hospital that bears Barbara's name. Mrs. Bush's legacy flows through the halls of the hospital that was named after her in 1995.
We were blessed to have her lend her name to our children's hospital and honored, and it's made just an incredible impression on the care we provide here.
Barbara Bush not only donated her time and resources to the hospital, she was a leading advocate for literacy. As First Lady, she launched a campaign and worked tirelessly to help people learn how to read.
It was absolutely a labor of love. CBS 13's Marissa Bader is joining us now live. And Marissa, she would often visit schools reading to children.
That's right. Those who knew her say Mrs. Bush believed the most wonderful gift she could give her children and other families was a love for reading and for learning. Locals here say that was a passion she shared right here in town and across the nation. Now, shortly after President George H.W. Bush entered the White House in 1989, she established the Barbara Bush Foundation for Family Literacy. Since then, the foundation has raised more than $110 million to create or expand programs in all 50 states. Here in Maine, Mrs. Bush offered her time reading to kids at her namesake hospital and stopping by schools. She was also known to visit the local library while spending summers in Kennebunkport.
Having her visit and just seeing her out and about and just always sort of reminding us of, what we were doing was a great thing. It was a nice thing to hear.
Staff there shared some of their favorite memories of Mrs. Bush with us today. We'll have those coming up at 6. We'll also share the contribution she made to the library right here in town. For now, live in Kennebunkport, Marissa Bodner, CBS 13 News. Back to you.
All right, Marissa, wonderful to hear those stories. Still ahead here tonight, rare footage of Barbara and George H.W. Bush decades before they moved into the White House.
Barbara Bush and Poppy Bush, Yale.
Here, Poppy and Barbara Bush, married couple from Yale, use it for their combination living room bedroom that's right for entertaining, right for living.
The promotional video the two appeared in back in 1948, where it was discovered, and the glimpse it gives us of the couple early on in their marriage.
And Kim and Greg, it seemed like everybody had a Barbara Bush story, whether it was a conversation, a photo op, or a handshake. And there was one place that she and her husband really liked to share those moments, and that was at Barnacle Billy's in Ogunquit. The Tower family showed us the table. That's right. It's the table that they sat at every single time they came to visit the popular restaurant. It was only fitting that they sat right under the American flag, flying at half-staff tonight. The Tower family says when Barbara came in, often wearing her beloved gardening hat, you could expect the unexpected. Kathy Tower says that was just Barbara's way, and summers just won't be the same without her.
A lot of people would miss seeing her here. She was just a pillar of strength and just such a good sport, such great personality, just so down to earth with everybody. They were a big asset for our restaurant. People really love seeing them here.
That includes at a local church where they attended services. In fact, they attended 2 different churches in the area. CBS 13's Sam Reed is also joining us live right now, continuing that part of the story. Sam.
The First Congregational Church is one of 2 churches Barbara and George H.W. Bush attended while spending their summers here in Maine. I did have the opportunity to speak to some churchgoers who say they attended Mass with Barbara for over 30 years and tell me Sundays will no longer be the same. Now, many say when Barbara was in town, she would never miss a Sunday morning service. Barbara and George H.W. frequently attended St. Anne's Episcopal Church, which sits directly across the water from their Walker's Point summer home. And when they weren't attending that service, they say they spent their Sunday mornings at the First Congregational Church. Churchgoers there say Barbara framed some pictures of her and her husband with other churchgoers and gave it to them as a gift. About 25 years ago, they dedicated a pew to their former First Lady and President.
They always sat in this pew whenever they came, and none of us would sit here because we would expect them and they would come and sit here. And this was just their pew. She was endeared to everyone in this whole town, and especially in this church, because we saw them so often when they were here. And she will be missed very much.
Now, the deacon of that church tells me as long as the church is standing, that pew will forever remain dedicated to Barbara and George H.W. Bush. Live in Kennebunkport, Sam Reed for CBS 13 News. I'll send it back to you guys.
All right, thank you, Sam. With 2 former presidents, 2 former governors, the Bush family really is an American political dynasty. They are a family that will be studied by historians for decades and stand out in modern politics because they show that people with wealth and power have responsibilities as well as privileges.
At this particular moment in time, presidentially speaking, the idea of a wealthy family that sees public service as reputable and as a worthwhile service is something for Americans to be proud of.
Now, a couple of other notable facts to pass along. The Bushes had the longest presidential marriage in history at 73 years. Just incredible to think about. Also, Barbara Bush is one of only 2 Americans to ever to be the wife of a president and the mother of the president, that being Abigail Adams being the other one, of course, the wife of John Adams and the mother of John Quincy Adams.